What becomes of the household when the one who once named the blooming trees forgets to guard the fire that warms the youngest hands?
The elder sat at the stone threshold as the morning light touched the empty milking pail.
The cow stood waiting, udder heavy, yet no one had risen to draw the milk.
A single branch from the old oak lay across the path, dropped in the night wind and left where it fell.
The children passed it on their way to the pasture, their bare feet learning the shape of neglect before they reached the gate.
By midday, the grain sacks leaned against the storehouse wall, still tied.
The woman who once rose before the others now moved slowly, her hips stiff from the long night she had spent watching the boundary stones.
She had walked the ridge the day before, naming each tree as she passed, yet when she returned, the half-stones were cold. No one had carried water.
The younger ones had gone to the river crossing to trade stories with travelers, instead of mending the fence that kept the goats from the young wheat.
At dusk, the men returned from the far fields.
Their tools rested against the doorpost, blades dulled by the day's work.
The elder asked quietly whether the boundary markers had been checked. No one answered at once.
The youngest child sat near the cooling stones, tracing a circle in the ash with one finger.
The silence at the hearth lengthened like a shadow across the floor. Seasons turned, the oak dropped its leaves early.
The path to the pasture grew narrower, where the grass was no longer cut.
The woman who had once called the trees by name now sat with her hands idle while the children learned to carry water alone.
Each morning the elder watched the unused scythe lean against the wall and wondered how long a blade could rest before the field forgot the hand that once held it.
One evening, the travelers returned from the river crossing.
They brought news of another household whose fence had fallen and whose goats had wandered into the ripening grain. The children listened, eyes wide.
The woman who had once laughed at the pink bloom on the ridge now turned her face from the door.
The elder placed another log on the fire, though the wood was damp and the smoke rose thick. Winter came.
The storehouse held less than the year before.
The goats grew thin because the fence still leaned.
The children no longer sang while they worked the boundary stones.
The elder sat at the hearth and asked the gathered kin what would remain if the one who once guarded the joy of the land no longer rose to name the first green shoot. Spring returned slowly.
The woman walked the ridge again, slower now, and stopped where the oak still stood.
She touched the bark and spoke the old names aloud so the youngest child could hear.
That night, the fire was lit before the stars appeared.
The milking pail stood ready at the threshold.
The scythe was taken down, and its edge drawn across the whetstone until it sang.
Yet the fence at the far pasture remained unmended.
The travelers still spoke of households that had grown quiet.
The elder watched the children carry water and asked again, softly, whether the circle that once held every hand would close around the next planting, or whether the path would continue to narrow where no one walked.
If the one who once sang to the trees turns away from the fire, the household learns to move without song. The fields grow narrower, the tools rest longer.
The children inherit a circle with an empty place, and the land forgets the names it was once taught to answer.